Hello everyone, Ace here, and today I have yet another fake news hit piece to cover. This time it's an article written by Keith A. Spencer for Salon.com, simply titled, "Why Unmoderated Online Forums Always Degenerate into Fascism." Yes, that's right. Believe it or not, we've actually reached the point where these journalists are now claiming that free speech leads to collectivist ideologies. Collectivist ideologies that, I might add, are inherently unsustainable in a society that promotes free speech. But before I even talk about the article itself, let's look at the photo that they've used here, which is itself actually a composite of two very different photographs, which I'm showing you here now. So in other words, they've essentially shopped both of these two photographs together so they can lump both of these groups of people into one group. In other words, even the photo that they've used to headline this article is in of itself fake news. So you can already tell that we're off to a flying start here. But you may ask, what are the actual claims of this article? Well, it would seem that Mr. Spencer here believes that the lack of moderation on sites such as 8chan causes them to get radicalized due to what he calls the selection effect, which as he defines it is just another way of saying echo chamber without actually having to say the phrase echo chamber. The basic idea here is essentially the same, only instead of this being the result of people constantly being blocked or banned off of other social media platforms such as Twitter or Facebook, like in your stereotypical echo chamber, Keith suggests that by comparison the selection effect is the result of the vitriol being spewed on 8chan being so severe that it actually pushes normal people away from the site. Now, I do actually have some very severe issues with what he is suggesting here. My main one, of course, being the fact there is no correlation between moderation or lack thereof and the radicalization of people on these social media platforms. In fact, despite his attempts to try to use sites such as YouTube, Twitter, Reddit, or even Facebook to suggest that moderation reduces radicalization or even prevents echo chambers, this is simply not the case. As a great example of the sort of thing that I'm talking about, just look at Facebook. In their case, it wasn't even too long ago that a big controversy broke out because they tried to change their policy in a manner that would allow people that they didn't like to receive death threats on their platform. That is not only unacceptable, but outright illegal. My point is that not only has moderation failed to prevent radicalization on Facebook, but you could actually argue that the moderators themselves, the people in charge of Facebook, are radicals. So unraveling this main core argument that Keith Spencer makes in his article means that it collapses in on itself already. But this is not the only problem I have with his work either. As in one paragraph he explains that, quote, "I don't relish having to report this or diagnose how these things work. This should be regarded as some kind of online psychology law, so that we can stop misunderstanding what free speech is, and we can stop letting the right claim that term as though they actually understand what it means." And in this particular paragraph he actually provides a link to another article from Salon.com, also made by himself of course, where he goes on to explain his belief that deplatforming people that he does not agree with is not itself an act of censorship, and not a restriction on free speech, which is bad enough when you're talking about public speakers at events. However, he has now shifted the context to talking about random individuals who are on what should be considered public forums. Which means that now he's making the argument that the online equivalent of taping someone's mouth shut when they're protesting at a public park is not an act of censorship. And that's only if we assume that every single post he wants banned or removed is itself an act of activism. But of course, even by those low standards, that is simply not the case, because he also goes after things like irony. Take a look at this paragraph, for example, where towards the end he suggests that, quote, "adopting an irony-poisoned disposition is actually a great way to protect oneself from these kinds of attacks," which is of course in reference to politically incorrect speech. But the point is, imagine believing that irony is a poisoning force of the mind. So yes, there are a lot of problems that I have with this particular article, but I would however be remiss if I didn't mention the one point that Keith Spencer makes here that I do actually kind of agree with. And that is, he seems to openly admit that actually trying to get rid of 8chan will not work. And that is something that is 100% true. Trying to ban 8chan will only, in my opinion, make things actively worse. However, trying to add moderation to 8chan would likely bring the same effect overall. People would simply flock to a new site anyways. So it's my opinion that censorship is simply not the answer. In fact, I would even go so far as to suggest that in some ways it's even actually part of the problem itself. But of course, I will be completely open to discussion with you, the viewers, over this topic. In any case, this has been Ace. Hope to see you guys again soon. Take care. Ace out.